for who started to explore the truth of the process.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering, because production can be either technological, but it can be also like labor, people's labor, and I feel like this, for example, doesn't really celebrate as much as, say, like Judy Chicago's dinner table, where that's the concept. It becomes both the end goal, but it's also the production becomes the end goal in a very clear way.
Does it make some sense to you? Now, the thing with this Heidegger essay, it's interesting. I was just talking about it to a friend the other day, because I edit this journal with a colleague of mine, and journal is called Philosophy of Photography. So we thought about some next issues, and I thought it would be really interesting to do an issue about the way the English Heidegger, or how Heidegger is received or understood in English-speaking cultures. And as we were started to talk about it, it also became clear that somehow, for whatever reason, in English universities, Heidegger is very rarely taught in philosophy departments. He's really mostly taught in fine art context. The situation in the States, I think, is a little different, and in Germany, Heidegger is predominantly taught in philosophy departments, and artists are not interested in Heidegger. So that is very interesting. But I think one of the reasons Heidegger is important to artists is because he can help us to understand that the process of art making has an expressive value that you will not find in the end result of art. And to say the same thing slightly differently, this is perhaps one of the reasons why we put so much emphasis in this course on installing the work. Because in the install, the process comes to the surface. The process of the making becomes more tangible. Any questions so far? Okay, now, so that was Heidegger, and I need to make a link now between Heidegger and what we're going to read today, which is Foucault. And this is the link. I will put it in very, just easier to come out and just say it. With Heidegger, the problem is that Heidegger was a fascist. And while he has really exciting things to say about images and very interesting things to say about technology, he doesn't have an ethics. So it's kind of really difficult to use Heidegger's insights if you want to think about art as doing something political, which is not fascist. Yeah? Because, and there could be a longer conversation about Heidegger in this context. But I just want to jump into Foucault introduction. So, 1968, the student riots in Paris, Berlin, Rome, the kind of the 1968 spring revolts produced a wave of writing and thinking and making art. It kind of really was trying to deal with the way this moment is a kind of difficult to grasp in traditional terms. So, because this book was written right after 1968, I think they published it for the first time in 72, and that is the context that we need to talk about. Is it 72, yes, in French. So just after the 1968 riots, and you will see, just so strange. That's what we are reading today. But be it as it may, the Second World War ended in 1947, 1948, And after that, it seemed that things are just looking good, things looking up, especially in the West. So for about 20 years, there was a kind of consensus that while the consensus was that if you are a politically minded intellectual or a thinker or an artist or a poet or a queer or whatever, then you read Marx, you talk about the communist revolution, you look to the east, to either Mao's China or Stalin's and Khrushchev's Russia as examples of perhaps deeply flawed but still progressive social solutions. You criticize your existing liberal government, whether it is in France or in Germany or in Italy. You also are versed in psychoanalysis, and you read Freud, and you find ways of connecting the Marxist doctrine of class struggle with the Freudian doctrine of the unconscious, which is also a kind of a form of struggle. So there was a kind of way of being a left-leaning creative intellectual. And then what happened? Then the Vietnam War happened. So suddenly, this political order, this liberal political order, turns out to behave in a very evil way. Just kind of bombing villages and burning people with napalm. So that's kind of a problem. And the student revolution of '68 on some level is a rejection of the liberal state, but it is also a rejection of the opposition to the liberal state, which is the sort of Marxist, Freudian, socialist. Both seem to be too systemic, too organized, too somehow almost connected, sharing very similar principles. Something else is needed. So out of this background, a number of new texts appeared, and first among them is probably Deleuze and Guattari, Anti-Oedipus. Now today we're not going to read Anti-Oedipus, but we are going to look at the introduction by Michel Foucault. It's very short, it's just a couple of pages, but it is like almost everything Foucault has written. It is beautiful and very, very succinct, very sharp. How many people here have a text? Okay, I need to open the document here. I don't seem to have it. It just disappeared from the folders. Anyone has the text?
I can send you the link if you want.
Sorry?
I can send you the link if you want.
Send me the link, please.
Put on the stick.
You have a stick?
Yeah,
Have a
I
look?
need to copy on the stick.
But I think Irene might be able to send it to me. Okay. Is it?
I did.
Where is it?
Just there, the fifth one down.
Ah, great. Thank you. Okay. We're just going to read a couple of paragraphs, and then we're going to have a break. Okay. Right. Could someone read to us the first paragraph?
I can't promise it. I think it's going to be.
No, I think we can give you a rest, given that you are now recuperating. Could someone else read?
During the years 1945 to 1965, I'm referring to Europe, there was a certain way of thinking correctly, a certain style of political discourse, a certain ethics of the intellectual. One had to be on familiar terms with Marx, not let one's dreams stray too far from Freud, and one had to treat sign systems, the signifier, with the greatest respect. These were the three requirements that made the strange occupation of writing and speaking a measure of truth about oneself and one's time acceptable.
Great, thank you very much, Matthew. So what do you think Foucault is saying here about this period of 20 years from 45 to 65? What he says was kind of typical for this period.
So you're referring to civilizations and discontents?
What do you think?
Yeah.
Why?
Like Freud, no?
Why?
Political discourse, that was Freud's, no.
What do you think he's talking about here?
It's the way you said earlier on, the extraordinary, trying to think about technology in an extraordinary way. It's sort of saying they're kind of fixed in a, this is the way you approach everything.
Right,
It's fixed.
okay, so he says, during the 20 years after the war, there was a certain fixed way to be an artist, let's say, or an intellectual, which is the same thing, or a militant, or a revolutionary, or a student, you know, or a lover. All of these things are kind of, in this context, interchangeable. There was a particular style of being which had three qualities or three identifying characteristics. The first one is Marx. The first one had to know, you had to know your Marx. You had to know your Marx. The second one, you had to know your Freud. The third one, yes, you had to know your theory of science. And by the way, in photography departments, that's still the case. Minus Freud and Marx. You still need to know, your Marx, i.e. you need to talk about politics in terms of class struggle. Yeah, that is your template, that is your point of reference. If you discuss, for instance, the election result from this morning, you will discuss it in terms of class struggle. You might say, well, that's, the underprivileged, there is a sort of battle between the middle classes and the working classes. And this framework of the class struggle, yeah, effective it is, will help to conceptualize, to somehow frame whatever is going on. You also need to know your Freud, which means you need to show respect to Oedipus. You need to show that you are aware of the unconscious, yeah? That you understand that the psyche is your psyche, is made of the ego, the id, and the superego. And one day we will have a session about Freud, and we will go into these things in more detail. But you have to be, so basically your social problems have to be understood through class struggle. Your personal problems have to be understood through Freud and with the help of a therapist or an analyst. And finally, you have to be on you have to understand semiotics. You have to talk, you have to use the language of science. So, I mean, you do it all the time, it drives me mad. You often say, oh, but that symbolizes this. I did this because it means that. You know, you're already talking in this language of the science or the science systems that he's talking about here. We have to think, well, how do you know? How do you know that something is symbolizing anything? You know, where that came from, and what that symbolizes. That you are so obsessed with symbolizing. These are the three pillars of the modern intellectual. Why? Because the new intellectual that Foucault is talking about here, emerging, we might want to call the postmodern, just to keep things simple. I'm not saying that that's what we are, because we are probably in a kind of postmodern moment, but it's just helpful to see that what Foucault is here putting his finger on is precisely the shift from modernity to postmodernity, and how the notion of what it means to be an artist or an intellectual or a writer or a poet is changing. So in the 40s, in the 50s and 60s, if you knew your Marx, if you wanted to be an artist, you had to know your Marx, you had to know your Freud, you had to know your semiotics, and a lot of work, a lot of art was made from within these parameters. Okay, now let's take a break. Is 10 minutes okay?
Could you stop that?
Great, thank you so much for this. Great.
Oh. Yeah, that's it.
Julia? Proposal.
I think we're getting to send it. That's all right. I'm on my fourth apartment. Yeah, I'll send it to you.
That's what.
Into my lab, there is a registration workshop.
Where? It's good. What time? 2 to 4?
Oh, yeah.
That's okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Just grab something to eat in between. But I think it's important that you do these registrations.
I just want to go see.
Yeah. But also
Otherwise, end the project.
try to get some. Try to get
So the
take
very
a
first
look
was
at your document.
I have it printed.
Yeah, we will get this.
It was such a great idea, like to try and just basically like put it together and like that.
What?
To start from it.
Who's spelling your name? Is it Adrian?
I think you need to start from trying to. So basically saying is, what is independence?
Do you?
No.
I was like,
And
that's
maybe,
really cool.
maybe your whole thesis is trying to understand what independence means in the context of the race. Yeah. Well, but I think you cannot take independence as a step. You cannot take it for granted. In the same way, you also cannot take curation for granted. We know what it means.
Nothing for granted anymore.
Well, that's also hard. Yeah.
But I like the starting point. Independence is not.
Independence is not.
And for that, they have quite a lot of research.
But what does it mean?
No, I think you think
What does it mean to have
I'm
independence?
just going to sort this out for you guys.
independence from what? From air, from water, from. What does it mean to be independent? It kind of wants you sort of try to develop it. Independence is exactly what Kant is saying is superiority. So maybe that is a kind of enlightenment project, enlightenment concept.
I think I found it really useful so far, to think again back to the independence of matter. In the sense that cancer cells are independent because there is no other purpose rather than extension and multiplication. The same as like slime or mist.
This is interesting. Yeah. So if you say, well, to be a curator is like being a cancer cell.
In a
I
sense,
like that.
I'm not using the actual, it's not about, I was thinking about this, it's not like a cancer cell, it's more like, how it's called, how this protein, because cancer cell is one of those, it's not protein, but it's like the virus, it's not virus.
The free radicals?
No. Come on, Sasha. Proton, no. It's basically like the structure of a cell, which behaves like a virus, but virus is like dead cell, it's not like kind of living organism. This one is alive, and it gets into the kind of normal structure, function organism, and it looks like how you say, like a Superman version of normal protein. So the proteins, it doesn't make proteins like kind of infected, but it shows itself, and the protein starts to copy its behavior, and therefore we get kind of this structural changes. It's called proton. No.
But maybe
But it's
your opening line should be something like, there is no such thing as independence.
Because also the idea of like pure independence is not independence from X and Y and Z, but just like the idea of what is. Because you don't say like, you can say independence from, okay, but what's the idea of pure independence? In itself, I don't know. I was really like supported by this book on horror of philosophy by Vijay Tiger. Like where he basically gave this idea of who's the monster that doesn't come from the cosmos, it comes from the earth, like the catastrophe, vapors, which doesn't have any function to the corporate world. It's just an empty thing. And that's why it's artificial.
You might want to look at
But then you have to bring
now.
first research paper, right?
Yeah.
This is a good thing.
Yeah.
I like that. The same as you just get rid of the research paper.
That's one way to talk about independence.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I'm gonna miss it.
Maybe it's open way.
Because then you're like moving or whatever.
Your industry is great. And you just took it and started using it for perhaps you can also substitute something working with something.
Terrible choice.
Enough outside. This is
No, but it's enough fun. Yeah, it's enough.
8 years ago that they didn't want censorship. So it was the DMC basically said,
Daniel, I don't use paper about separating image with
Very qualified.
Yeah.
Like that's exactly the opposite.
Exactly.
People are like, you know what it's called about all telling the truth. What do you think about this? It's nice to see.
I liked it.
Yeah, I like it as well. I like the fact that she makes like sculptures from ceramic.
Yeah.
you're not going to kind of, what's not kind of a race comparison, like,
Oh, yeah.
actually, like, it's actually kind of
It's more bodily. It speaks a lot more freedom.
Did Vinicius dropped out?
Yeah.
But-
what?
Did
But very
Vinicius,
much like,
you know, from your
Ah,
past?
you
Vinicius.
sound like a bodily or
No, he didn't. Yeah, he didn't come this year.
Really?
Yeah, but he's coming next year.
Okay, he just like,
I've got
posed.
Yeah.
No, I can see that. No, I'm kind of jealous you guys had her for a little bit. It was like to let her talk a bit more. Because I remember she gave a talk in first year. But I can't really hark back and like remember a lot of what she
Yeah.
said.
But sometimes it's about like how people say things, and like she was like, again, like not afraid to say, not like saying the word like makes you agree, but you know, within, you know, kind of not afraid to kind of just be yourself or be politically correct or.
Where are you from?
Brazil.
Brazil?
We have a friend in common, and
I
that's
like
why I
that.
know.
Yeah.
Told him that he was
Also, he is from Brazil.
Yeah.
Different
different cities.
Okay. And now, what are you doing now? Are you living here in London?
Yeah, I'm in Greenville. And I'm like, what?
Literally.
Like, yeah, oh yeah.
So you don't want to go back to Brazil?
No, I'm still gonna be here for at least 2 years.
Oh, okay. And then going back.
I mean, I know.
Yeah, and then I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know because I'm here with my husband. Who's
Okay.
doing a PhD.
And he's from Brazil?
Yeah.
Okay. So did you come together?
In fact,
Yeah.
my friend did.
Yeah, I studied MA, he studied history, G.
Yeah.
So you said
I'm
that.
really consistent,
Yeah, a
but
lot
I
of
have
people
like funny
have
village,
that issue with that.
you know.
Even what like,
So just,
What is out there? Try to explain for me. What I'm gonna do. What
just be a but
Yeah,
I just try to help.
that's the point.
It's not that there's like thousands of jobs, like,
Exactly. That's why
waiting for you.
That's why I like feel that the back end of the because thousands of so there is more
It's when he talks about how his things feel like this.
working on I need to have
in that.
Oh, I don't know who they were. Oh, I didn't know that. I was like, somebody brings a lot of bananas for their day.
A lot of the things that, like, especially when it's stuff, I can see how that actually was quite like, kind of destabilizing perception. And that's the scary thing.
So it's sort of, no, it's not who you're moving, what you're looking at, your directions. Sort of far from the building.
Yeah.
I've taken a break.
Why ULIA?
And then a draft. It's kind of.
О, Вот это я первая. Да. Я могу даже угадать, Богу Женя. Богу Женя будет пас.
Yeah.
Пас. Интересно, он такого нельзя. Как бы, пошла. Аня Россия. Я думала, ты Женю Богу знаешь. Да она сейчас опять становится. Она из Майами, рядом была. Нет, я одна Богусом дожила, что Бачи. У меня нет. Я половина ВКонтакте, половина